Welcome aboard the Spirits Operator podcast. I'm your host, psychic medium Mary B. Join me as we navigate the ethereal currents between the mystical and the mundane. Get ready to explore the unseen forces shaping our world and discover how to harness their power for personal growth, healing, and transformation. I would like to introduce Mary. She is a dedicated teacher and writer from a place called Kildare in Ireland. Kildare town itself is steeped in history, with records going back to the 5th century. Having a degree in history, Mary's passion for the past is deeply rooted in her love for folklore and early Irish history. Mary's work is inspired by the rich cultural heritage of her hometown, and she brings this passion into both her teaching and writing, sharing the stories and traditions that have shaped Ireland's past. Hello, I would love to welcome Mary. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Mary? Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Now, Mary and I have been friends for, 14 years now?
It could be around that, yeah. Maybe closer to 10, 11, I think.
Oh, maybe. Yeah. Okay. Yep. You're probably right. I'm like calculating more years than we
That's
have.
okay. Time flies.
I know it. I know it. Yeah. We met back in New Mexico, and then you are back in Ireland where
Yes.
you're born and raised. So I'm super excited to talk about the Irish lore and things like that with you today. So, um, now, Mary, you are a storyteller yourself. You're an author and also a mom and a teacher. So you
Yes.
have storyteller roots within you. But I want to talk about the Seanchaí. Tell me about them.
So basically, Seanchaí, I suppose they're Irish storytellers, and it comes from the Irish word, old stories, and so they were, I suppose they were kind of people who used to travel around to different houses, and not only to tell stories to entertain, but to preserve the Irish tradition, like the oral tradition. Because if you think about it, like things weren't really written down until very recently, and that's why we see so much variations in stories.
Mm.
It's like, even endings, like we have lovely stories that we even tell the children in school. It's part of the history program, so Irish folklore and tradition. And those stories, there's always about maybe two or three different variations of the stories, which is really interesting you
Do
know
the kids tell you story like their versions of it? Do they bring it up in class?
Yeah, they could say, no, miss, that's not really what I learned. Like, well, just, and that's the opportunity to tell them, well, because of the Shanky not really writing things down, it was based on oral tradition. So it was it depended on maybe what farm they were in, the Shanky, they visited the houses, but like, generally they were fed and they were kind of taken care of, and maybe the community would come to a specific household, and the Shanky would tell stories, and that was their entertaining before television, before radio. So we're talking about maybe in the 1940s, 1950s. Now, obviously, more recently, it's become, an outdated thing. But there is a
Oh.
store in Kildare town called Shanky Bookstore, which kind of
Oh,
draws in that tradition as well, which is
I
nice.
like that. They should bring it back because I think we miss part of our heritage when we lose those oral stories.
We do. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm glad you're here telling these today. And okay, so I'm going to ask about one of my favorites. And the only reference I have is Scooby Doo. Okay. So don't be too hard on me. I'm going to go with the Banshee. I want to learn about these Banshees. So tell me more.
Okay, so Banshee, they actually were fairy women. A lot of people believe, so the tradition kind of tells us, they were like female spirits. And
Hmm.
although, like, not many people have seen them, some people have, and it's only really certain families that they follow. So just say, like, what would it be? I think the McGraths, the O'Keefes, I think it's the O'Neills as well. So certain families would hear the banshee more, but they say like that they're not spirits or banshees. Like they shouldn't be feared. You know,
Hmm.
they're only there to warn of imminent death.
Oh,
So, which is very interesting. Like, when you think, oh, jeepers, Banshee, but, I'm going to die. But they're just warning about a death in a specific family. And, even online, if you look yourself, if you're very interested, if you look up Banshee stories, from Ireland, there are like family members telling their stories about when they heard the scream of the banshee, and I think it's so high pitched. Like that's what people say anyway. That it's very. I have never heard it myself, but obviously when we were growing up as children, it was a story that was told. Oh, the call of the banshee or whatever. But the people who have seen a banshee, they've described different things. So some people say that they might have really long, dark hair. Other people say they would have long red hair. Some people have said that they were very old looking, in their appearance. But the most commonality, I suppose, between everything was the red eyes. So people say no matter what, if they've seen them, it's the red eyes. But generally, they weren't a creature to be seen; they were more a creature to be heard.
okay. Okay. Do you know anybody personally that's seen or heard them?
No, no. I'd love to say I did. I really would, but I've
Just
only heard
curious.
stories. Yeah, yeah.
How interesting. Oh, yes, because I guess on this side of the pond, we're portray them as very scary, and you're fearful of the scream, and it
Yes.
makes you deaf, and death is coming your way, and all of that. So
It's interesting how
how
you say that it
interesting.
makes you deaf. I've never heard that.
That's my interpretation of it. That it's so loud that you can't hear anything anymore. Like
Okay.
it's so loud that it pierces your ears,
Ouch.
and your ears ring. But yeah, very interesting. Okay, okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I wonder what they actually like, where they come from, where they actually are. Are they family members of these families that they're coming to present that to them in their
Yeah.
way?
And maybe a warning. That's what
Yeah,
I kind of gather. It's maybe more of a warning to the
not to
family that
spook
somebody's
them.
going to die. Yeah.
Yeah, not like Scooby Doo. Okay, we got it. See, all I learn, is from cartoons. It's ridiculous.
That's
So I'm
okay.
glad you're here to
Yeah.
straighten it out.
No, that's okay. We have to learn and hear these things from somewhere, don't we?
Yes, yes. Oh my goodness. Okay, so next on my favorites list is going to be fairies. So tell me about fairies in the Irish way, because I know they're different kind of everywhere.
Okay. So I know you know a lot about probably leprechauns. Wouldn't you have more? You've heard a lot about leprechauns, a little bit.
Well, I'd say yes, but it's probably not accurate. I mean, it's probably not the accurate stories. It's probably like a version that's been chopped up and put into some sort of TV program that, we're aware
Because
of.
it
So
makes for interesting selling, doesn't it? Like it's
it sure does. It
people
sure
want to hear
does.
those things, yeah. And particularly when we think about like festivals that we'd celebrate, and maybe across the world, like St. Patrick's Day, you think of leprechauns when you think of Ireland and whatever. But would you believe that leprechauns, some traditions say that these are the male version of fairies?
Oh,
Other traditions say that they're kind of a group within like fairies, that they're just a mysterious and mischievous kind of folk, that they're always up to mischief. But the
yes.
fairies, the fairies themselves, actually, which is really interesting, they were even before. Now it's believed that they were in Ireland before the Celts. So they came from the Tua de Danann, we call them, and like it was probably we're talking of before 500 BC, and
Yeah.
like they were defeated by the Celts. So the two did that, and then after being defeated, they kind of changed into what they call in Irish language sheogs. So we call them shees, and that's the other name for fairies in Irish, basically. And they just hid. So they're creatures kind of that sort of hide, and they hide in like fairy circles and fairy rings and things like that. Um,
Mm.
and and the Halloween tradition, kind of feeds into that a bit because in Halloween, like there's a whole lot of traditions where they believe, that there's fairies about. So you have to kind of protect yourself from being kidnapped by fairies, which I know sounds mad, you know.
I love it.
Yeah, or that fairies like they're sort of into mischievous things, and you don't want to be on the misfortunate side. You don't want to be, I suppose on their bad side. So you want to keep
Well,
it.
how do you get on the bad side of a fairy? That's
Oh,
what I
that's
want to know.
right. Well, I suppose going back to like Celtic traditions, they used to offer food just say outside villages and their towns, and they used to like leave offerings for fairies outside the fairy circles. The fairy circles were kind of fairy rings, I should say, were kind of pre-Christian sites, like the way they believed them to be fairy rings,
Hmm.
and you'd often see them just if you look up prehistoric ruins and sites, pre-Christian kind of ones that you'll see these kind of which we still call fairy forts. So
Fairy
anyway, they
forts.
used to bring them food and leave the food outside, the fairy fort, so they wouldn't be kind of cursed by the fairies or kidnapped by the fairies. Uh,
Gotcha.
and also, do you know, have you ever heard of a hawthorn tree or a whitethorn tree?
No.
So these have very special mystical and, sacred, uses. Like, and even if they have mystical properties, just say, the berries even now, like they're related to the fairies. So that they believe to be sort of magical trees with well, I suppose the berries, if you eat them, they have antioxidants, anti-inflammatory purposes, I suppose, anti-aging, all of that kind of things. But they're related to the fairies. And if you dare cut down whitethorn tree or as they're called, a hawthorn tree, then you will be put in harm's way for the
Oh
rest of
my.
your life. You'll have bad luck. So actually, do you know, even still to this day, because they're associated with fairies, because I suppose they see it as like the fairy meeting place under the hawthorn tree.
Okay.
Um, if if now, like just say a farmer has a hawthorn tree on his land or her land, they won't cut it down. They'll work around it because they don't want a curse from the fairies. And it's believed
I
also
love
that the
it.
farmers that have the hawthorn tree on their land will be, like, I suppose, prosperous, if they just leave
Oh,
it alone. So, and it's still
interesting.
believed. And furthermore, which is it's kind of mad when you think about it, um, they didn't. There was, I suppose, there was a delay of like years. I think it was up to 10 years of a delay when they were going to cut down a hawthorn tree in a certain place to make a motorway, kind of like a highway in Ireland. So they wanted to find a way to go around the hawthorn tree rather than have to go through it, because people do not want misfortune.
Yes. I
Amazing.
there's something to be said for these old traditions. I mean,
Yeah.
truthfully. And so one thing I wanted to ask you is what are the fairy circles or fairy mounds made of? What are they what do they look like?
Well, it's kind of, if I suppose, from a bird's eye view. So if you were looking down, like on a camera or whatever, downwards, you'll see like it's not like a fort, like a ring in the earth.
Mm,
But it's like there's kind of like what would you say, a mound of land, and it's like a circle.
okay.
So if you wanted to look it up yourself, you could look up pre-Christian. I suppose you could say fairy forts. Do you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes.
Interesting, because over here, that this is another thing that kind of gets misconstrued as time goes on or changes over here. Our fairy rings are mushroom rings.
Ah.
So when they pop up in the yard as a ring of mushrooms in a circle, it is said not to cut them or you will be cursed. You have to let them die
Okay.
naturally. Don't mow over them. Mow in them, but not mow over them.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so that's something that's kind of carried over here.
Okay. And would many people abide by it?
You know, it's interesting because we're in a very Christian based area, right? The Bible Belt of the United States, and I've seen it quite a bit that people are superstitious over it. They'll mention it and be like, "Don't do it." You'll bring misfortune upon your house or whatever it is. And they'll take pictures and put it up, and it's very interesting. So,
And you saying that, like, it brings to mind, Ireland is, a very Catholic and Christian country.
mhm.
And like, it's amazing that we still keep the superstitions, from just say, prehistoric, pre-Christian times. Like, like even just say places like Kildare, the town where I'm from. There's
Mhm.
St. Bridget's. St. Bridget's is like a patron saint of Kildare, and really important in our society, whatever. We've even got a recent holiday for her. The
Yeah.
last 2 years actually. It's good, but she comes from a prehistoric lady called Breed. So apparently, like, they're two different people, but I think Breed was Christianized and became
Yeah.
Bridget. That's what it's kind of believed afterwards. But it's amazing. Do you know we talked about hawthorn trees?
Yes.
Well, any of these Christian like sites, just say like in what was it, Ben Bulben in Sligo, and we also have Tara in County Meath, but just in Kildare town, which I'd be more familiar with, in St. Bridget's Well, there's a hawthorn tree. And, it's amazing that people bring offerings like materials and rosary beads and things like that, and they hang it on the hawthorn tree. But it's
Mm.
amazing that the hawthorn tree has its association with, the fairies, but also now the Christianized association with,
Yes.
prayer, asking for
It
something.
merges together those traditions and things. They were created for a reason, and they carry down that ritual. And even though that religion may have come in and changed things a bit, that kind of deep seated tradition and culture lives through time.
True.
And I think that's very interesting to note. I personally have had experience with what I would consider fairies, or sprites and things. And as a child, I could see them, but they were just like little light beings, like little flickering light beings, colors and things like that. And
Oh,
I've had them in the house. We call them fairies, whether that's what they are to, the Irish tradition or not, probably not. But I created offerings for them and created a garden specifically saying, hey guys, this is where you can live outside of the house, not inside the house, because there was all kinds of stuff happening. There was like stones missing and things being topped over and the cat chasing nothing. I mean, it was really quite interesting for a while.
wow. And would you see them, or would you have seen them as small beings? I know you were saying it was kind of reflected as a light, but would it have been a kind of a small being?
So I've seen them mostly, well, when I was little, they were small beings. In this setting, as an adult, I didn't see them with my regular eyes until nighttime, and they were kind of like a red and purple with a like gold around them, and they were floating around my room.
Wow.
And they were scared of the dog, like that. I knew that that's what there was energy around that. They were kind of like nervous of the dog. And I said, no, it's going to be okay. You're fine. You're fine. And I'm trying to get them to do what they need to do and just relax, so that they don't cause drama in my house. But
Yes.
after I built the little fairy tray, the fairy house in my house, and then outside, they stopped messing around.
Okay.
So I don't know.
That's cool. That's cool. No, the reason I asked about the size is because, I had talked about earlier on, we were talking about leprechauns.
Yes.
Well, it's amazing from the Irish language. Leprechaun just means like short body. So lu and chorp. So it would become from the Irish word, the Gaelga. So it means short body. So it's amazing, like, that, obviously the association with leprechauns and fairies, and we talk about, shortness in their body. So, it's just an interesting fact to the name.
Yeah, about 2 feet, like about 2 feet high, altogether is what I've seen. So I don't
Well,
know.
there you go. Yeah, there you go. Really interesting.
Now, do you find hawthorn trees on fairy mounds often?
I don't know now myself. I haven't gone to see any. That's an interesting question, but now I
Yeah.
want to find out.
No, I want to know too. Yeah. So if you find out, let me know.
I will absolutely. That's something. If anybody listening to your show visits Ireland, they're going to have to go and see.
Scout out some fairy mounds, but what I've also heard about fairy mounds, and this again from where I come from, do not step in them. You don't enter them. You don't put your feet on them, or you're gonna die or something. Is that true?
Oh, really? Okay.
Is
Okay.
that true in the tradition?
I don't think so. Now, I mean, there's a place outside. There's a place outside Kildare, outside a place called Rathangan, actually, close to me, and they have a little fairy village. Now, it's a replicated kind of an area where children go and see, and we always tell the children, no, you have to be quiet for the fairies, and obviously there's a fence up there so the children can't go in. But I wonder, is that the reason to keep people out, or is it because, you know, yeah,
Yeah, you're gonna have to start asking the elders some questions.
yeah,
Let's get this
absolutely.
clear.
Yeah, so
Oh
if
my
we're
goodness.
any Seanchaís available, maybe they could tell us.
That's right. And this is what we need them for. Come on, we need to ask them all the old questions to bring up. And I love that we've got, people that move here from Ireland and then bring their traditions here. And then of course that changes over time. And so I find it interesting how everybody has their things, but they all kind of go back to one, one
Yes,
story. It's very interesting.
absolutely. Do
Oh,
you dress up in America for Halloween, don't you?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And well, I suppose you could tell me a bit about the belief system behind that, or the reason behind that, or maybe I thought maybe it's linked with the Celtic system.
Mm.
Why do you dress
So,
up?
well, I can only speak for me personally since I haven't historically kind of dug into it. I dress up because I find it, well, for one, it's fun. Okay. And two, you get to be someone different and interesting for a night, like something that you've never done, someone that you've never represented. Maybe, maybe you do, but it's and then there's that idea of scaring people, which I think is funny too.
I
I
like it.
do enjoy a good spook fest, and so that's always interesting. Now, in the Celtic tradition, though, it's Samhain. Is that right? Is that where it
That's true.
started?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So we still call it like Iha Hauna. So like that would be the night of Samhain. It's kind of between before winter and after summer. And it was like the new year. So they were getting ready for winter.
Say that
And
again. What's the name of it?
so we call it Iha Hauna in Irish.
Ihahauna. Okay.
Ihauna. So the night of Samhain. So it's when you're kind of getting ready for the winter and after the summer, and kind of it's sort of the new year, the beginning of the new year, the Celts believed anyway, from about 500 BC. So I suppose the thing is they believed, well, they believed that the reason that they should dress up was, one of the reasons was because there was a window to the two worlds, so it was kind of where spirits could enter our world, and it was that one night when it was open, and also the family members, or people who had died, could cross over, you know
Mm.
but I suppose the mask thing was about you know what would you be, kind of trying to look fearsome so the bad spirits don't come get you. Do you know that kind of way?
Ah, you were trying to
So
scare them. Okay.
absolutely, yeah. But then, as well as that, like there are stories that tell us that it was obviously just to play pranks on, it'd be the scariest. The way like somebody wants the best costume, but
Of
obviously they
course.
didn't have the things at their disposal that we have today, so they would have used animal hides and animal I suppose heads and things like that. And the scarier the
Yeah.
better, so
Oh
that they could
my.
remain unidentifiable. Like
Could you
between
imagine?
the fairies and the yeah. Imagine moving teeth and everything. Like
Woo. I love it though. Sounds really
it's
exciting.
quite cool. And can I ask you, do you have bonfires in America? Do you like bonfires?
We do. I know that where I grew up in New Mexico as a teenager, we would get together and have huge bonfires, and they typically would surround sporting events and things like that. And I like them actually during like full moons and things like that for ceremonial purposes, releasing negative energy, setting up yourself for the new moon and bringing in positive stuff. So that's what I use the fire for, as a
Yeah.
bonfire. And of course, it's not traditional. It's in some little like can, that doesn't
Yes.
cause me a lot of drama. But but we have on our street, as neighbors, had a giant bonfire where we were throwing in all kinds of wood, and it was great. So yeah, we do have them.
That's cool. Well, do you know they're actually called bonfires because
Bone.
bone
Oh
because
my.
it comes from the Irish Tina Canov. So it's kind of like the Irish tradition as well, the Celtic tradition, where they used to burn bones. So they
Oh
used to burn, yeah, amazing. So you could, I'm not going to encourage that you should start doing that.
no, but I am going to call it bonfire from now on.
So bonfire, but you know what? Even myself, I kind of say bonfire, because it's just the way I suppose that the language progressed. That's the way it is. Language changes, because it's a living language. But
Yeah.
so I suppose they used to burn bones, maybe of animals and things like that in it, because then they used to get the ashes the next day and spread the ashes on their land to make it kind of fruitful and beautiful, fertile land. So that was the
Mm.
belief behind that. It's
Like
amazing though, isn't
honoring.
it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that as honoring the animals, honoring the earth.
Yeah.
That's very um, druid, pagan
Yes, exactly.
related. Uh,
Druids, yeah, the druids, you're right there. They used to actually light the fire in the village, but when the fire, the bonfire, whatever in the village was lit, for Samhain, any other fires would be put out. So in the
oh,
houses or whatever, they would just be extinguished and everyone would celebrate. It was kind of almost mandatory. You had to celebrate and you had to dance around in your masks and that was
oh,
the
how
way.
terrible.
Yeah.
Do you still do this, Mary? Is this still happen?
Um, we're kind of gone. Like I suppose we do have children dress up, and we do kind of go from house to house, and we trick or treat or whatever, and maybe sing a song, and then people give treats, sometimes money or whatever for the children. I don't think the adults will get away with that. But
Bummer.
there's bonfires or bonfires are sometimes lit in, maybe estates, like, in communities that they'll have, like, they'll just gather things to burn and have a big bonfire for Halloween
Interesting.
night because, I suppose it's the only time you're going to get away with it, burning things because, we're gone environmentally friendly now and, you don't want to be doing that. Like, it's for the environment.
Oh man, and here we are burning everything over here, let me tell you. Yeah, I mean, the big thing, don't burn plastic. That's the one
Yeah.
thing that we're like, don't do that.
Yeah,
It's not smart.
absolutely. No, no. And that would just be black smoke, wouldn't it? It's not
That
even
is
nice.
true.
Yeah.
That is true. Now, Samhain. Okay, so let's go back to that. So it's celebrating the in between. So Samhain is basically Halloween for you. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, so it actually comes from the tradition. It's like Halloween for us comes from Samhain, the tradition. So it's like a pivotal point in the calendar year for the Celts, and that's where it all came from. And I suppose that was the time. Like they got ready for weeks beforehand. Getting bringing their animals in, deciding which ones to sacrifice. And then I suppose sacrificing them for their hides and whatever for the costumes, and also
Mm-hmm.
then they used to bring in the harvest before the Halloween. So it was kind of like they were getting ready for the winter, if you know what I
Okay.
mean.
Okay. Big prepping.
And that
Okay.
kind of it continued on to become what we now celebrate as Halloween.
Interesting. I wonder where the name changed. I'll have to look that up because that's
Yeah,
interesting. Hmm.
yeah, Samhain. Yeah, yeah. But we
Okay.
call it still, like I said, in Irish language, it's called Ihauna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Actually, do you know what? I think I do know why they changed it to
Okay.
Halloween because the Christianized thing happened again. Like, do you know the way, isn't it that the first. is, I think I could be wrong here, but I think the 1st of November is All Hallows Day.
Yes.
Am I right there?
Oh, Hallows
So
Eve, I think.
yes, yes. So
Hmm.
yeah. So whatever, or yeah, something like that. So I think that's how it's Halloween. I think that's how the name. So it was
So,
Christianized again to make a Celtic tradition into a Christian tradition.
okay, gotcha. Makes sense how that
I
panned
think
out.
so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to look up the exact dates and things on that. So that's very
Yes.
interesting. Um, I do I do find it interesting as well. I'm going to be talking to another friend of mine who celebrates Dia de los Muertos, which is the Day of the Dead, which is right around that same time. And curious how the stories kind of overlap, even though we are far, far away from each other, and through time, how these things overlap. And there's, like I said before, because there is tradition, there's something to be said for how we feel about these things, how they're in our lives and how they affect us, and the energy that surrounds that, you know. And you know me on my podcast, I'm all about, you know, energy and trying to understand it. um, this this part is tradition, and that tradition is ritual, and ritual is part of healing process and death and life and all of that. So
Absolutely. And
interesting.
just giving us a better understanding of it, isn't it?
It is.
We're learning, we're growing. Every day is a school day, as we say.
I love that. You would say that, Mary.
Yeah. The
You being a
teacher in me.
teacher. I know. I love this. I love this. All right, Mary. Now, I've one more question I have for you is about the carving of pumpkins. Can you tell me? Do you have any history on that?
So I believe the carving of pumpkin tradition came from carving of turnips.
Yeah,
So yeah, and I know if you've ever seen a turnip carving, it looks kind of crazy. It looks really scary,
they do.
doesn't
They look
it?
creepier as they dry. They look. They're like, ugh.
Yeah. And you can imagine, like, I know a pumpkin is hard to carve, but you'd imagine a turnip would be even
I would
harder,
think so. Yeah.
you know? So you'd wonder why. But I think we used to do that here in Ireland, you know, carve turnips. And then I think, you know, as the tradition carried across the Atlantic, then I suppose it turned into pumpkins because they were more readily available,
Oh yeah.
you know, for Halloween. But I think the tradition initially comes from like white turnips. Well, there was this guy called Stingy Jack,
Stingy Jack.
and
I like it.
you need a Seanchaí now to tell you the story. But he had a conversation with the devil, and apparently he tricked the devil not just once, not just twice, but 3 times.
Nice.
So,
Good old Jack.
so when he died, yeah. So when he died, anyway, he was refused entry into hell. He was refused entry into heaven, and he ended up roaming the earth with a carved out turnip and a piece of coal in it to light his way.
Oh my.
So yeah, that's really where it came from.
Okay, so poor Jack is a ghost and walking around with a turnip head for a lantern.
Yeah,
Okay, you know what?
yeah.
I think I found my new Halloween costume. Do we have images of poor Jack? Because I really want to get this going.
I'm sure if you scan the internet there, you'd find a few.
I'm gonna put Jack on my shirt, and they're gonna think I'm Jack Skellington or something. No, no, I am Stingy Jack, you know, from Ireland. Don't mess with me.
Stingy Jack. Yeah, you can be their Seanchaí. You can tell them the story. This is where it came from,
Yes,
guys.
yes. I actually really love this. I wonder if I could just find turnips instead of pumpkins this year. Because have you ever carved one, Mary?
I haven't. You know what? I find it so difficult to carve the pumpkin, so I can only imagine how difficult
Stabbing
that
it.
would be.
Okay.
I don't like the hardship. The hardship that would bring would just be too much.
Oh my goodness. Oh wow. Okay. Well,
This year could be the
hey,
first.
you know what? I bet your kids would love to stab some turnips.
With any anger issues they might have, you know, if they come home from school going, I had a terrible day. Well, here you go. Here's
Here's
a
your
turnip.
turnip. Have a great
And then when they
time.
get fed up, yes. And when they get fed up, we end up like chopping it up and using it for dinner.
There
Like,
you go. That's exact. Hey, what a dual purpose. I love this. That's going to be my new thing.
That's it.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm glad you're here, and I'm so glad that you were able to tell these stories and get my head straight on the Banshee and make sure that, you know, I got that right and my pronunciation for
Absolutely.
things. I appreciate you, Mary.
You're doing great, Mary. You're doing brilliant.
Now, I want to make sure that the listeners know where to find you, my son, Seanchaí of Ireland, my storyteller.
Well, I suppose my stories now are more for, like, as you know, I work with children. So as a teacher, I suppose I'm trying to find a way to connect with them so that they'll enjoy learning. And I suppose it's through story. And that's what, that's, I suppose, where my inspiration comes from, working with children and, what they find interesting.
Yeah.
So if you are interested in, buying those, you can find some copies on my website. So which is www.maryflynnauthor.com.
Nice.
So there's just 2 books that I've written, but I'm hoping to release a new book in that series, and I'm also writing another book, which is kind of like a novelette, which would be for an older child.
Okay, so the 3
at the moment.
are for preschool age children. Is that right?
Yeah. So that you'll find there's 2 at the moment, and then there'll be 1 up soon. But yeah, preschool age, and even if they're going to read it themselves, they could read it up to maybe 6 or 7.
Yeah.
And they could enjoy it. It's a kind of a rhyming story. Have you ever heard of I don't know, Julia Donaldson, or authors of that, like, it's kind of similar. So it's a kind of a rhyming story, but there's always a moral.
Yes.
So it's nice. It's nice.
I
nice
have your first book, and I enjoyed it. I think it was sweet, and there is a great moral to it. So I appreciate you putting that out there into the world, and I'm looking forward to hearing more. Actually, this is the first I've heard of your novelette, so I'm looking forward to hearing more about this as you branch and grow into more age groups. Pretty cool.
Yes. But it's always something fun. If you enjoy something, you have to just keep doing it.
That is true. That is I guess that's the moral to life anyway, right? Have a good time. And as long as you're not hurting anybody, have a good time.
Absolutely. That's it.
All right. Well, thank you, Miss Mary. And I'm really glad that you were here today, and looking forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you very much, Mary, for having me on your podcast. I really enjoyed it. That was fun.